My name is Claire. I'm 52 years old, and I live in a quiet little neighborhood outside of Richmond, Virginia. My husband Mark and I have been married for 27 years. Not always perfect, but we've managed to weather most storms. We raised 2 kids, planted a small garden in the backyard, and built a life together. That morning started like most others. The sunlight poured through the blinds, soft and golden, warming the floorboards in stripes. I padded downstairs in my slippers, hair pulled into a messy bun, still wearing my robe. Mark had left early for a golf outing with clients. I remembered hearing the front door close around 6:30. I had the whole house to myself, or so I thought. I wasn't even fully awake when I entered the kitchen. My mind was already on coffee. Strong, black, maybe with a splash of vanilla creamer. I turned the corner, expecting silence. But there he was, Ethan, Mark's best friend since college, the man who practically lived in our house during football season and who helped us move when we bought this place 17 years ago. He was standing at the counter, back slightly hunched, eyes scanning something on his phone. His presence startled me, and I almost dropped the mug in my hand. Ethan? I blinked. What on earth? He looked up slowly. There was something unreadable in his expression. Not embarrassment, not quite guilt. Hey, Claire. His voice was low, calm. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. I clutched the fabric of my robe tighter around me, suddenly very aware that I hadn't even brushed my hair. What are you doing here? I thought Mark was meeting you later. He was, but I needed to talk to him before that. He said to just let myself in. That made sense. Ethan had the spare key. He always did, for emergencies. Still, something felt off. There was a tension in the air, something heavy hanging between us. And then I heard it. The faint sound of footsteps, upstairs. I froze. We weren't expecting anyone. The kids had moved out years ago. There was no reason for another person to be in the house. I looked at Ethan, who must have noticed the confusion on my face. He didn't say anything. He just held my gaze like he was silently begging me not to ask. Who's here? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He hesitated, then exhaled slowly. Claire, it's complicated. No. This wasn't happening. I started walking toward the stairs, but Ethan stepped forward and gently placed a hand on my arm. Please, let me explain first. I pulled away, more out of instinct than anger. There are women in my house, Ethan. His jaw tensed. Yes, but it's not what you think. That phrase, it's not what you think, is never a good sign. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was curious, confused. The kind of confusion that makes your skin feel too tight and your thoughts run in loops. I crossed my arms. You have 10 seconds. He looked down at the floor like he was organizing his words. She's my sister. That stopped me. Your sister. He nodded. Half-sister. Her name's Leela. She showed up this morning, completely out of the blue. I haven't seen her in nearly a decade. She's been through a rough time. I didn't know where else to take her. I blinked. So you brought her here? She needed somewhere safe. Mark said it was okay. He told me to wait here with her until he got back. I swear, Claire, I didn't mean to intrude. I took a step back and leaned against the kitchen island, trying to absorb it all. Everything about Ethan looked tired. His normally sharp features were weighed down by worry. and something in his eyes, maybe shame, maybe desperation, made me believe him. Still, I wasn't entirely sure how to feel. A strange woman was upstairs in my home. Ethan was acting like he hadn't slept in days. And Mark, my husband, had given all of this the green light without telling me. I drew in a long breath. Well, I suppose I should meet her. He looked up, surprised. You sure? She's already here. Might as well say hello. He nodded, almost grateful. Okay, just go easy on her. I followed him up the stairs, my hand lightly brushing the railing like I needed to anchor myself. Every step felt heavy, uncertain. Ethan knocked gently on the guest room door before opening it. Sitting on the edge of the bed was a young woman, mid-30s maybe. Long chestnut hair, pale skin, eyes that looked like she'd cried all night. She stood quickly when she saw me, her expression a mixture of embarrassment and politeness. Claire, Ethan said, this is Leela. She stepped forward, extending a hesitant hand. I'm so sorry for just showing up like this. I didn't mean to be a burden. I took her hand. It was cold, fragile. You're not a burden, I said, surprising even myself. I'd just like to know who's in my house. A small, tired smile crept across her lips. We sat down in the living room afterward, the three of us. I made coffee. The silence between us wasn't hostile, just thick with things unsaid. Layla didn't give too many details, just that she had left an unhealthy situation, and Ethan was the only family she trusted. She didn't ask for anything except a little time to figure things out. And somehow, I found myself softening. Maybe it was the way Ethan looked at her, like she was the last piece of something broken. Maybe it was the exhaustion in Leela's voice, or how small she seemed sitting on our couch in that oversized hoodie. That morning, something shifted in me. I didn't know what it was yet, but it had begun. And it all started with finding Ethan in my kitchen later that day. After Leela had gone upstairs to lie down for a nap, the house was finally quiet again. Too quiet, in fact. I stood by the window, mug in hand, staring out at the bird feeder Mark had installed last spring. A pair of cardinals danced around it, flapping and chirping in their own language, unaware of the strange tension that had just moved into our home. I wasn't sure how to feel about Leela yet. There was something about her that felt raw, like she was only halfway put together. She hadn't said much, but her eyes carried stories. Painful ones. I could sense it. The kind of emotional wreckage that doesn't show on the outside but leaves marks all the same. Still, I wasn't used to people appearing in my home unannounced, even if it was Ethan's sister. I kept thinking about Mark, too. Why hadn't he told me she was coming? Why had he sent Ethan over instead of coming himself? Ethan was still in the kitchen, quietly cleaning up the breakfast plates. He wasn't a loud man, never had been. That was part of what made him so likable. He didn't take up space the way some men do. But now, his silence felt different, like he was waiting for something. I walked in and leaned against the doorframe. He looked up briefly, then back down at the dishes. "You want to talk?" I asked. He dried his hands on a dish towel and gave a slight nod. "Yeah, I do." We moved to the dining table, sitting across from each other like it was some kind of negotiation. For a while, we just stared at our coffee mugs. "I'm sorry," he finally said, "for springing this on you." "You should be apologizing to Mark's wife," I replied, "not just your friend's roommate. This is my home." "I know," he said, voice soft. "Mark told me you'd be okay with it. He said you'd understand." That stung, because part of me did understand, but I hated that I hadn't even been asked. I hated that I was expected to just roll with it. Ethan, I'm trying to be gracious here. But next time, can you give me the courtesy of a heads up? Or is that too much to ask? His expression shifted, not to anger, but something heavier. Regret. You're right, he said. And no, it's not too much to ask. I wasn't thinking straight this morning. When she showed up, I panicked. She looked like hell. Said she hadn't eaten, had a bruise on her cheek. I didn't know what to do. A chill ran through me. A bruise? I asked, sitting up straighter. He nodded. It's not fresh, he added quickly, but it's not old either. I exhaled slowly, the pieces starting to arrange themselves in my mind. The oversized hoodie, the puffy eyes, the way she flinched slightly when the kettle hissed. It all made sense now. Did she tell you what happened? Not much, just that it was bad, and that she left in the middle of the night. My chest tightened. What about the police? She doesn't want to go to them. Not yet. Said she just needs time to figure things out. I'd rubbed my temples. And Mark's okay with her staying here? For how long? Just a couple days. That's what he said. Just to get her somewhere safe. I sat back, arms crossed. Well, she's here now. And I guess we're in it. Ethan nodded. Thank you, Claire. Seriously. I studied him for a moment. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, stubble he usually didn't let grow. I could tell this wasn't easy for him either. I just want to help her, he said. She's all I've got left of my mom, and I wasn't there for her when she was younger. I'm not going to screw this up now. His voice cracked slightly on the last sentence, and I saw something I hadn't expected, vulnerability. A kind of emotional nakedness that surprised me. For years, I had known Ethan as the charming best friend, the guy who brought beer to the cookouts and made dad jokes that actually made people laugh. But this was different. This was the side of him that most people probably never saw. I stood up and walked to the fridge, more out of nervous energy than anything else. I needed to feel normal again. I needed something to do with my hands. She can stay, I said, opening the fridge, but just for a few days. And I want to be clear, if things feel off, or if I get uncomfortable, I'm saying something. I won't be a bystander in my own home. Ethan stood too. Fair, completely fair. And tell Mark, I added, he needs to talk to me. Not just assume I'm going to be fine with everything. Understood. We stood there for a moment, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. There was something almost domestic about it, the two of us in the kitchen, navigating a strange, intimate situation neither of us had asked for. I finally turned to him. You hungry? He looked surprised. A little, yeah. I pulled out some eggs and a half loaf of sourdough. I'll make breakfast. You do the coffee? Deal. It felt oddly comforting, this little truce we had formed. As I cracked eggs into a pan, I found myself sneaking glances at him. There was something in the way he moved, slow, deliberate, that made me notice things I hadn't noticed before. The slight graying at his temples, the way he leaned on the counter when he thought no one was looking, the tension he carried in his shoulders. I shook the thoughts away. This wasn't the time for anything more than support and clarity. But even so, there was a moment, just a flicker, when he handed me my mug, and our fingers brushed, where the room felt warmer than it had a second before. I didn't dwell on it. Not yet. But I didn't forget it either. Later that evening, after the day had finally settled into a soft dusk, the house took on a quieter tone. The kind of quiet that usually brings peace, But this time, it felt different. Layla stayed in the guest room, door closed, a small lamp casting shadows through the crack beneath. Mark still wasn't home. And I couldn't stop thinking about that moment in the kitchen, Ethan's hand brushing mine. I didn't want to read into it. It had to be just a coincidence, a tired gesture between two people managing a difficult day. But deep down, something shifted inside me when it happened, something I hadn't felt in years. That subtle, fluttering spark of being noticed, truly noticed, in a way that had nothing to do with duty or routine. I curled up on the couch with a blanket and turned on the TV, more for the sound than anything else. Ethan sat at the other end, nursing a glass of water, his eyes occasionally flicking toward me. I tried to ignore it, but eventually I had to say something. "Still no word from Mark?" I asked. He shook his head. He said he might be out late, depending on how the meeting goes. I sighed. Would have been nice if he called me directly, or told me any of this before today. I know. I told him that too. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, exactly, but it was full of thoughts neither of us were saying. I changed the channel. Something light, a sitcom I'd seen before, but I wasn't really watching it. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Claire, can I ask you something?" I muted the TV and turned toward him. "Sure." "How are you?" Really. The question caught me off guard. People ask that all the time, but they don't usually mean it. They expect the usual: fine, busy, tired but okay. But the way Ethan asked it, it felt real. He meant it. And I didn't know how to answer. "I don't know," I said after a pause. "I guess I've been better. I've been worse too. I've just kind of been managing." "Managing?" He repeated, like he was testing the word on his tongue. "That's a hard place to stay in." "Yeah, it is." He looked at me then, and there was this softness in his eyes that I wasn't ready for. Not from him. Not now. "Claire," he said quietly, "I've always admired how strong you are, how you hold things together." I looked away. Compliments like that made me uncomfortable, especially when they felt too close to something true. "You don't know everything that goes on here," I said, voice barely above a whisper. "I know enough," he replied. "I've seen the way Mark leans on you, how you pick up the slack, how you make space for everyone but yourself." I turned my face toward the screen again, but the show was just noise. "I didn't mean to bring trouble to your door," he added. "Leela, she's hurting, but maybe I should have found a hotel, somewhere else." I shook my head. "No, she needs this. And I could now. I wish someone had told me sooner. I'm not as brittle as people think." "I never thought you were brittle," he said, his voice low. "I think you're one of the strongest people I've ever known." Something about the way he said it. It wasn't flirty. It wasn't inappropriate, but it was deeply personal. It was honest. And for the first time in a long while, I felt seen. We sat like that for a while, the quiet hum of the house around us, the TV flickering in front of us, and the unspoken things gently swirling in the air between us. I should have gone to bed. I should have stood up and said good night and walked away from the feelings that were starting to take shape inside me. But I didn't. Because in that moment, I didn't feel like Mark's wife. I didn't feel like the mother who kept the calendar, paid the bills, watered the plants. I felt like Claire, a woman, a person, sitting across from someone who was looking at her like she mattered. and that was a feeling I hadn't realized I'd been starving for. Eventually, Ethan stood. "I should head out," he said softly. "Lila's asleep. I'll check in on her tomorrow." I nodded. "Okay." He walked to the door and paused with his hand on the knob. "Claire," he said, not turning around, "thank you for being kind, for understanding." And then he left. I stood at the window for a while after that, watching the headlights fade down the street. My heart was beating too fast for no good reason. Mark came home almost an hour later. I pretended to be asleep when he climbed into bed beside me. He didn't say much, just sighed, rolled over, and went quiet. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling. I wasn't angry, but I felt something shift, something quiet but certain. And I knew that after today, I couldn't keep pretending that everything in my life was just fine, because somewhere in the stillness, I had started to feel again. The next morning, the sunlight crept into the bedroom slowly, washing the walls in soft gold. I lay there for a while, listening to the sounds of the house, the low hum of the refrigerator, the faint creak of the pipes. Mark was already up. I could hear him moving around downstairs, clinking a spoon against a mug. I sat up slowly, my body heavier than usual, not from exhaustion but from thought. I hadn't slept much. My mind kept going back to the quiet conversation with Ethan, to the way he looked at me. Not with desire, not with pity, but with something far more dangerous. Understanding. When I finally came downstairs, Mark was reading something on his tablet, half a banana untouched on his plate. "Morning," I said, keeping my voice neutral. He looked up and gave me a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Hey, you sleep okay?" I nodded. "You got in late." "Yeah," he said, rubbing his neck. "Went longer than I expected. I figured you were already out." I was. I lied. There was a long pause between us, the kind that fills the room like steam. You can't see it, but you feel it pressing into your skin. Then I said, "So, when were you going to tell me about Lila?" He blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Ethan didn't say. He said you gave him the green light to bring her here, that she needed a place." Mark looked down at his tablet. "Yeah, well, she does. I didn't want to bother you with it until I knew for sure. Ethan said she was a wreck, and I trust his judgment." "You trust his judgment more than mine." He set the tablet down. "Come on, Claire. That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" I asked. Because the way it played out, I opened my kitchen door and found your best friend and a strange woman standing in my house. No explanation, no warning, just, "Here, deal with it." Mark sighed and leaned back in his chair. "You're right. I should have told you. I just didn't want to dump more stress on you." "That's the thing, Mark," I said, voice steadier than I expected. "You assume I can handle everything, so you just keep piling it on. And I do handle it. But it doesn't mean I don't feel it." He went quiet. "I've been invisible in this house for a long time," I continued. "I make things run. I smooth over the edges. I keep the peace. And in the middle of all of it, I got so used to being the glue, I forgot I was a person." Mark looked at me then, really looked, and for a second he seemed unsure of what to say. "I don't want to fight," he said. "I'm not fighting," I replied. "I'm telling you how I feel. That's different." The sound of footsteps on the stairs broke the moment. Leela entered the kitchen slowly, wearing one of Ethan's old flannel shirts. She looked better than the day before, more rested, her shoulders not quite so hunched. "I can come back," she said softly. "No, it's fine," I told her. "Come sit. Want some tea?" She nodded, and I busied myself at the stove, welcoming the distraction. Mark cleared his throat. "I'm going to step out. Let you two talk." When he left, Lila turned to me. "You're probably wondering how long I plan to stay." I placed the mug in front of her. "I'm wondering if you're okay." Her eyes glistened, just a little. I wasn't, but I might be getting there. Ethan's been good to me. And you didn't have to be this kind. "Kindness isn't a favor," I said. "It's what we give each other when things get hard." We sat in silence, sipping tea. There was no need to fill the air with stories. Sometimes it's enough to sit beside someone who knows how it feels to break a little. Later that day, Ethan came by. He knocked this time. I opened the door and found him standing there with 2 grocery bags and a shy smile. "I figured you could use a break from cooking," he said. We set the bags down in the kitchen, and for a while it felt like any other afternoon. He chopped vegetables while I stirred sauce. Layla leaned on the counter, talking softly about her plans. At some point, Mark came home. He looked between the 3 of us, me, Ethan, and Layla, and something shifted in his face. A flicker of realization, maybe, that he'd been absent in ways that went beyond the physical. We ate dinner together. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward pauses and hesitant glances, but it was a start. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I stood at the sink washing the last of the dishes. Ethan came to say goodbye, keys in hand. "Thanks for tonight," he said. "For everything." I turned to face him. "You're a good man, Ethan. She's lucky to have you." "She's not the only one," he said. There was a pause. Not heavy. Not suggestive. Just honest. I smiled, small but real. "Good night, Ethan." He nodded and left. And I stood there in the quiet, the hum of the dishwasher behind me, the warmth of something unnamed resting gently in my chest. I didn't know what would happen tomorrow, but I knew who I was again. And that was more than enough.